I want to address the question that no doubt all of us at some point have been asking during the week. I've heard it from some of you, and I know that others will be asking one variation or two of this question. Why does God allow evil and suffering? Why does God allow evil and suffering in the world? How could God allow this to happen to our beloved Faye? And it's a question that we're all asking, isn't it? In some way, shape, or form. How could God allow this? Why is there evil and suffering in the world? And why would God create a world in which there is such suffering and evil? So that's the question that we're going to start with today. And then we're going to circle back to God's solution in Jesus. Before we get on to what the scripture has to say about evil and suffering, we need to ask another question. If the answer to evil and suffering is not the Christian solution, then what alternatives are there? Outside of the Christian worldview, what ways of thinking about evil and suffering are available to us? Well, let's think about atheism for a start. Naturalism. We're all just animals at the end of the day, just DNA. DNA just is, and we dance to its music, says Richard Dawkins. According to an atheistic worldview, there is no supernatural realm. There is only DNA, and we are just animals. In a worldview such as that, there's no way to ground such a thing as evil or goodness. There is no way to define what evil and goodness are. There is only what is. And what is neither good nor evil. It just is. And so what we might consider moral evil, the things that plague us as human beings and the things that grieve our hearts, are simply features of the universe and the world in which we live. Death is a reality. In fact, death is necessary to the driving forward of the evolutionary paradigm. Evolution is a paradigm that's driven by death. The species with which we see the earth populated now populate the earth precisely because they are the species most suited to survival. They are best fit for the environment in which they live. And they become best fit because they're predated. They are predated. Thank you. They are predated upon by other species. And so the strong survive at the expense of the weak, right? And so the weak ones have their DNA weeded out of the gene pool, and the strong ones who are more fit and able to survive have their DNA continue on. And so that species, because of the process of death, is able, more fit and capable of surviving in its environment. Does everybody see that? Evolution is predicated upon death that is necessary in the system. There is no way to ground good and evil in an evolutionary paradigm. There is only what is, and whatever is right. And so for an atheist to say, well, that's evil, is logically incomprehensible. It makes no sense. To say such a thing is actually a violation of the very worldview that they claim to believe. Or to put it another way, they actually have to borrow a Christian worldview in order to express the very things that they say don't exist. But we all know, don't we? We all feel the reality of evil. We all see the reality of evil in the world, and we all experience, express, and see the reality of suffering around us. And so none of us really want to play that game. That's why the atheist will continue to talk about good and evil and suffering, because they know the reality in their hearts. They know it when they see it. and their worldview has no way of making sense of it. So much so that they have to borrow my worldview, borrow from my God, in order to make sense of their existence. There are only a handful of times in human history when you see a consistent atheist. Hitler was a consistent atheist. The strong survive at the expense of the weak. We are the master race, and we have the final solution. No one wants to see a consistent atheist anywhere near any cultural power or authority, because a consistent atheist will destroy everyone and everything to get their way. Atheism has no answers in the face of evil and suffering. What about Hinduism? Well, Hinduism is predicated upon the idea of karma. Suffering is a necessary part of Hinduism. Because in Hinduism, you are going through your daily life suffering in order to pay off your karmic debt. And as you pay off your karmic debt, the hope is that in your next reincarnation, you get to be reincarnated as a better life or a higher kind of being. Understand? So suffering is necessary to a Hindu worldview. You must suffer in order to pay your karmic debt. Now, of course, Hinduism never tells you and doesn't provide you a way of knowing how much your karmic debt is. Even the evil bankers will tell me how much my mortgage is. But in Hinduism, you never know. You never know. And so you don't know whether you're going through your life, suffering through your life. You don't know whether you're actually paying down any capital on your karmic debt or whether you're just paying the interest that you're accruing by living today. You never know. You don't know whether the suffering you're going through today is just paying for the stuff that you did yesterday or whether you're actually paying down any of the capital of your karmic debt. The wheel just continues to turn, and the wheel just continues to crush everybody under its weight. That is a hopeless. You know, I mentioned banks earlier on. I made the allusion to a mortgage. Mortgage in Latin means death grip. That's what the word means, death grip. Well, that's Hinduism. Hinduism is a death grip. There's no life in it. It is a death grip. It's a death religion. It's a religion of death. And there is no hope in it. All there is the karmic wheel constantly spinning, constantly crushing you. And there is no hope of release. You never know whether your suffering today is paying for the pain of your debts of yesterday or whether you're actually paying down your capital on the previous reincarnations of your existence. You're just crushed by the karmic wheel. Day in, day out. That's why the Hindus have a caste system, right? That's where the Hindu caste system came from. In a Hindu system of thinking, if you actually try and help those who are suffering, you are getting in the way of the karmic wheel. And you are stopping them from suffering. And by stopping them from suffering, you are stopping them from paying down their karmic debt. That's why you step over the beggar and you don't help them. They are lower than me on the karmic ladder. They're a lower order of being and they're suffering their karmic debt. And I don't want to get in the way of that, because if I get in the way of that, they won't pay down their karmic debt. And if they don't pay off their karmic debt, they won't get to a higher level. So I'm actually hindering them by helping them. That's Hinduism. It's a religion of death, and there is no hope in it. What about Buddhism? Well, Gautama Buddha rejected Hinduism. That's why Buddhism and Hinduism have so much in common. He was a Hindu that eventually stepped away from Hinduism. And the entire system of Buddhism is built on the idea of suffering. It's Buddha, the Gautama Buddha, was trying to answer the question of why do we suffer? And the answer that he came to was we suffer because of our desires. And so the answer of Buddhism to suffering is to rid yourself of yourself and therefore all desire. And so it's to empty yourself of yourself and become part of the nothing. To embrace nothingness, to eradicate your personality, to eradicate your individuality. Isn't it funny how in a system such as Buddhism, where they want to eradicate individuality, they still have names? Like Gautama Buddha, for example. So we can single him out as an individual and point to him and know who we're talking about. How ridiculous. When the entire point is to eradicate your own sense of individuality and become part of the nothing. Well, they should just abandon all names then, so that they can't be distinguished in any way, shape, or form from the nothing around them. But they won't do that, will they? No, someone's got to be worshipped, and it may as well be me. So everybody needs to know my name. So all of Buddhism is established, it's founded upon the principle of suffering. He was trying to answer the question of why do people suffer? And the answer that he comes to is people suffer because of their desires. And he gets so close to the right answer. He gets so close and blows it. Yes, desire is a part of the problem. But what he fails to understand is that there are good desires and right desires. Right desires that we should celebrate and pursue. Desires for love, desires for community, desires for altruism, for loving our neighbor as ourselves. All of these things are desires, but they are right desires. The Buddha doesn't distinguish right desires from bad desires. It's just all desire is evil, and suffering is a result of desire. So we rid ourselves of ourselves, our individuality, become part of the nothing, so that you don't desire anything, and therefore don't create any suffering. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm actually quite attached to myself, and I think that there's some things that are pretty good about me. There are other things that, are questionable and things that we can debate. But there are some things that are good. And there's some things that are good about being human, right? And when we look at the human race, we see a race of people who are capable of wonderful, wondrous beauty. We look at human people and we see just there's such beauty in humans, isn't there? We're capable of such beauty, such love, works of art and poetry and music and self-giving and self-sacrifice and beautiful things that are to be celebrated. Do you think that too? Or is it just me? You think that too? That's good. You haven't fallen asleep yet. Good. Right? Such beauty. Human beings are capable of such beauty. But we are also capable of the most abhorrent evils. And the temptation is to go, well, yes, I'm all good and I'm right and I'm beautiful. It's just all those other people that are the problem. It's all those other people out there. They're the problem out there. It's easy to point the finger, and that's part of the problem, right? Is that we just love pointing the finger at other people. Going, you're the problem. It's you. If you would just let me have my way and let me do whatever I want to do when I want to do it, then everything would be just fine. If you just stopped trying to get in my way of self-fulfillment and self-authoring and all that stuff, and let me be the very best me that I can be in my authentic self, which is just downright selfish and sinful. It's very easy to point the finger at everybody else. But the truth is that the dividing line between good and evil doesn't run between people groups or nation states. The dividing line, it has been said, that divides between good and evil runs down the heart of every human being. We are all divided. We all suffer the same brokenness. So whether you look to Atheism, no answers. Hinduism, no answers. Buddhism, no answers. New Age spirituality, no sense. Never mind answers. It's like trying to nail jello to a wall, right? It's just like, how long's a piece of string? But New Age spirituality is basically a mixture of a whole lot of different things. And in the heart, you will find the heart of New Age, all New Age spirituality really, you will find at the heart of Eastern religion, you'll find Hinduism and Buddhism. And so it doesn't matter which way you turn there, you end up back at the same starting point. No answers. No answers. So when we're faced with the very real, the very guttural, the very visceral reality of suffering and evil, where do we turn? Where do we turn for answers? Who will answer? Where do we turn? When the vast majority of the worldviews that are offered to us on our television, on our radio, in our communities, are utterly bereft of any answers. When the best that you're going to find are aphorisms and empty words, delusional, empty words. Oh, it's okay. They live on in your spirit. They live on in your memory. They'll always be with you. What a load of nonsense. What an absolute load of nonsense. And what an affront to anyone that's ever experienced suffering to be told that that person that you've lost lives on in your memory. They do not. And it's the very fact that they don't that causes us to suffer in the first place. We all feel the reality, the rending that takes place when a life is taken from us. It's not just that there's an absence where that person used to be. Something has been torn from us. And to be told empty, vain, useless words like they live on within your memory, they'll always be with you. They're looking down. From where? Where are they looking down from? You don't even believe in God. You don't believe in the supernatural. You don't believe in an afterlife. Where are they looking down from exactly? Oh, from the heaven where you're God, and you get to determine who goes there. That's the heaven you're talking about. And the only person in that heaven, as far as I can see, is you. And your heaven looks a whole lot like hell. Because your God, the God that you worship, is doing nothing other than pursuing your selfishness and your self-interest. That's the reality of the world in which we live. Who will answer? Who will answer? From whence will the answer come?